Want to know why your business isn't growing? Well, it's because you are trying to be the doula for everyone, which means you kind of end up being the doula for no one. This is a very, very common problem, and it can feel very scary to start saying, like, I am for these clients and not for these clients. But I promise you, this is how you can put like rocket fuel in your business. It's one of the most important places to start. So instead of all the time you're spending like trying to get stuff seen on Instagram, it's probably not going to work, or YouTube or your website or, I don't know, all the other things you might be doing. It's really getting clear on who you want to work with is the best first step. So there's actually two main mistakes that I see new doulas make, and that's okay. The more you know. But the first one is building a product that you think people need, because you can see that they would need it, but they don't actually see that they need it. So then you're just trying to like convince folks to get your product or your service. And the other one is, just being like, I will serve anybody. And so, the second one is what we're going to focus on today is for people who want to be the doula for everyone. Instead of, really clearly solving a problem that's keeping people up at night and making sure who those people are, you're really clear so that you can continue just helping those folks over and over and over again. Okay. So when I usually ask new doulas, or actually pretty experienced doulas, so I do one-on-one consulting, so sometimes people come to me and they might be a few years into their practice and they're still kind of like slogging to get those 2 clients a month or 1 client a month or however many they're getting, and they're looking to grow. And so when I say, who do you want to serve, or who are you trying to serve? Some of the answers will be like, queer folks in Seattle, or Black women in Toronto, or teens. And they'll just be like kind of these overarching demographics. But if we took 100 Black people in Chicago or Seattle, whatever city I said. So it took 100 people from Seattle, 100 Black people from Seattle, and then 100 queer people in Toronto, and 100 teens, and we like put them all together. There'd be so many differences in, the demographics they might share, but there'd be so many different values and needs and fears and all of those things. And so we need to get way more clear than just the demographics. And so I want you to think right now, so maybe get your notepads out, or you can just kind of think about it and write it down later. But I want you to think about your favorite client or clients, like those ones that you were like, oh, I'm so sad when their contract ended. You like really enjoyed spending time with them. And I want you to imagine them. Now, if you're a brand new doula and you've never helped anybody yet and you don't have any clients, that's okay. I want you to think about who you would really love working with. And that could be a friend or a friend of a friend, or, a parent at your kid's school, like somebody you're like, oh, I really could imagine spending a lot of time with those people. And because I want you to really like the group that you're working with, because you're going to spend a lot of time with them. Like most births, if you're taking birth clients, I've talked about this in previous videos, it's usually about 22 on average 22 hours of care. Like you need to like someone to spend that much time in a really intimate setting with them. And then postpartum support, it can be, however many hours they book you. And so sometimes people will book you for like 3 months straight. And like, that's a lot of time to spend with somebody. So you need to really, really like them, because I can speak from experience when I've taken on clients that I didn't like, but I really needed the $2,000. By the end of it, I would have done anything. I would have been like, here's your $2,000 back. Please never call me, because it was really terrible, because they weren't folks that I enjoyed working with. They didn't have the values or the ideals, or like, they weren't my people. Okay, so I want you to think about someone you'd be really thrilled to work with. Okay, so now you're going to get really, really specific. I wrote down a bunch of questions and I don't want to miss any of them. Because when you're thinking of your dream client, a lot of times businesses or consultants will say things like, imagine your avatar. Like, yeah, sure, imagine your avatar, but I want you to give this is a person. They need to have way more depth and dimension. So the demographics will give you your avatar. Like, I'm looking to work with Black women between the ages of 30 and 45 who, cool, who have owned their homes, all of these things. But I want you to imagine their hopes and their fears and their desires and how they consume and where they live and all of those things. So I want you to think, where do they live? Are they urban, suburban, or rural? Because how you market and reach out to those folks and what their needs are very different. So I used to practice in Toronto for most of my career. And so I really knew urban queer parents. And then I moved to the east coast of Canada in the very rural community. And I literally felt like I was starting my business from scratch, because I was like, I actually don't really understand the needs and the struggles and how to connect with these rural expecting people. Now, fortunately, because my specialty is working with queer folks, I essentially just had to plant a flag and all the queers came and they came from all over. So I work in multiple provinces just because there aren't any queer practitioners that I know of, that I have met. So if you're a queer practitioner on the East Coast, please reach out. Okay, but I want you to think, where do they live? What does their home look like? What products do they use? What do they value? What matters most? Do they go to Walmart, or do they go to the local farmer's market? Like, really thinking about those things. What do they worry about at night? What stage of life are they in? How do they dress? How do they talk? What language do they use? And when I say that, like, we might be talking about a language as in they speak Spanish or they speak Farsi or something like that. But I also want you to think about the language as in, if you really want to work with plus size parents, are they calling themselves plus size? Do they say fat? Do they say big body? Do they say, I don't know, there's so many words, women of size, like there's so many. So I don't want you to come out being like, I don't know, hey, plus size mamas, when they call themselves, fat parents or something like that. And I use that one too, because sometimes people will have like mama or mummy in their business name or their product. And like, for me, I don't connect to that. I identify as a mom, but like something about like, hey, mamas, I'm like, oh, that's not really for me, just because of just where my role as a parent fits in my identity. Okay. But I want you to think about where they hang out online. What groups are they in? What accounts do they follow? And just like really understanding everything about them. And this is why, really understanding your dream client is so important, because, once you've kind of like have this idea of them, I want you to go validate it. And so I want you to go into groups that they're in and like notice how they talk, notice what they recommend, notice the problems that they're having, what classes are they considering, like all of these things. Really get your hand on the pulse of the folks that you are excited to support. Again, their language matters, their concerns matters, what kind of conversations. These will tell you a lot of information, and then you can stop guessing and you can start really connecting. Now, if I know this can be scary, we have a few videos about this, but I know this can be scary because you think if you're saying no to certain people, that it means like that you can't serve them. So if you really want to work with, let's keep the example of the plus size parent going. If you're like, I know I can keep plus size parents safe through this like incredibly fat phobic medical system. If somebody of straight size or who's not plus size reaches out to you and you have space in your roster, you can still support them. So I support queer parents. I support 1 or 2 parent lesbian families. Now, since I've been on the East Coast, I've been supporting anybody who would identify as queer, including trans folks. In Toronto, I would have sent them to trans practitioners. But in Toronto, I worked with 1 or 2 parent lesbian households. But if straight people reached out to me and I had space, so I wouldn't say no to a lesbian client to support a straight client personally, just because I do really great at supporting and protecting queer parents. But so you have that option. So I want you to rest assured, because sometimes that can feel really scary for people. But when you do sort this out, your marketing is so much easier because like hangs out with like. So when I was very clear, so there was a while I was the doula for everyone, and I changed my like dream client a little bit. But once I got really clear in kind of the last 10 years of my practice, lesbians tell other lesbians, and like fat folks tell other fat folks, and people who are looking for a VBAC like tell other people in their VBAC support groups. And so because like is with like, your word of mouth is so easy. Like it got to a place that people would reach out to me being like, I hope you can take me. But like back in the day, I'd have to go and be like, oh, so here's a bit about me. Tell me why you're considering a doula. Like all of these things to try to like woo and get these contracts. And then eventually people were like, oh, she doesn't have a lot of space. And so they'd write being like, please tell me you have a spot for October. We'll take it. We'll take it. And I didn't actually have to do consults. I mean, I still did them because I wanted to know if I wanted to work with them. But like the script had completely flipped from my first 10 years of working. Okay. And so they will tell their friends in their community, which is great for you. This is how we fill our rosters so quickly. And you're going to have so much more joy working with the people that you love working with or you think are really awesome. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to be talking about the second problem with getting clear on your dream client so that we can fill those rosters. So I will see you there. Bye, y'all.